when I was sent here and the bishop said you have to build a new church, I thought, like, where? And we found out that, yeah, there was nowhere to build another church. So we looked at this property over here. Now these folks, they wanted to build their own church. And they were called the Heights, New Heights Church of God. And they were having problems doing that. So when we approached them, they didn't want to sell. They wanted a church. So if you look over here at Gary Sippel's buildings, you see the fire hall across the street. Well, the fire hall, they really owned where his pond is in front of his buildings. And he was planning on building these office buildings, and he didn't want their firehouse in front of his building. And he owned the property across the street. So he came up with the bright idea. He told the fire department, what if I build you your firehouse across the street on my property in exchange for your property in front of my building? And they said, sounds good to us. So he suggested I do the same thing with the Church of God. So I approached those good folks who thought I had horns and didn't really like Catholics. And I said, well, what if we did for you what Gary Sippel did for the fire department? What if I found you another piece of property and built you a church in exchange for your property? So when we talked about how that was going to work, they thought, well, that doesn't sound too bad. And they really got a good deal, and I kept rubbing it into them how good a deal they were getting, that God was really on their side more than our side. And the dollars and cents, that was true. So we paid off their mortgage, and down off of Nicholson Road, if you go down Nicholson Road, right before you cross over 79 again, on the right-hand side, you'll see a sign, and I think it's New River now, and the church has changed hands, but if you turn up Warry Drive, on the left-hand side, you'll see the church we built, and there's a picture of it in this book, and that piece of property. And there was no money exchanged. There was just keys. And when I presented this to the bishop and his committee, they thought I was crazy. But I asked if anybody else had a better idea around the table. Of course, no one did, because we had checked out all the properties around here, and none of them were going to make it work. And so then Bishop Worrell at the time, he said, McCaffrey, what you're about to do quickly. Which is, if you know the scripture, that is what Jesus said to Judas at the Last Supper. Everybody around the table got the gist of what he did. So because of that, he was the bishop that gave us permission to build. Behind those bushes right there is the cornerstone of the church, and in the center of it is the coat of arms of Cardinal Donald Worrell, but it's his coat of arms as Bishop of Pittsburgh, because he was the bishop who established this parish. In fact, this was the first parish that he established as the bishop of the diocese. And the tradition is that usually the bishop will then name that parish after his own patron. So it could have been St. Donald's or Madonna, because Donald is for Madonna of the Blessed Mother. But he was also closing parishes at that time as well, and he knew that that wouldn't go over very well. So instead of naming it after himself, he did it after the Pope's patron saints, which was John Paul. So he named it after Saints John and Paul. And there's a sign downstairs in the lower level by the office where there was a letter exchange between Worrell and the Pope naming the church after his patrons. So that's that history. And the interesting thing is the connection between this parish and Cardinal Worrell is he established the parish on February 14th, 1994. He was named Bishop of the Diocese on February 14th. Not the same year, just a few years earlier, but there's that connection. So people who know realize should have been called St. Donald's. Now, when we were in the Vatican, when DiNardo was being named cardinal, wanted some connection between our parish and the Vatican to keep us connected with Rome. So we're standing in St. Peter's Square, and if you go to Rome and you're looking at St. Peter's, on the right-hand side, you'll see this image of the Blessed Mother and the child Jesus. And this is the exact replica of what that is there. The Pope John Paul II put it up. You see on the base of it is the cross with the M, the shield. That's his coat of arms. You'll see that throughout the church. And then his motto in Latin, totus tuus. Totus tuus means totally yours. And that was Pope John Paul II's coat of arms. Now the reason he put this image in St. Peter's Square, it hadn't been there before, it was after the attempted suicide attempt on Pope John Paul.
Not suicide.
No, I mean, not suicide. Scratch that. Assassination attempt. I'm glad you were paying attention. That he decided that the Blessed Mother saved his life, and that she was overlooking the square. So that's why he put that image in there. Now, that's really Mary of the Pillar. In the basement, in the lower level, in an ancient original St. Peter's Church, there's a column down there in the Byzantine period, and it has that image on it. And he brought it up from down there, and he had them make a mosaic. So we're standing in the square, and I'm talking to some parishioners, actually, Chris and Bob Pietrandrea. We're standing there with a crowd of people, and we're talking about what could we do. And I said, wouldn't it be nice if we had that image on our new church? And standing next to us was this Italian fellow, and he says, well, I'm a mosaic artist, and I can do it for you. And we were like, yeah, right, sure. But he was definitely an Italian, and so we ended up, Bob ended up arranging to meet with him at his studio, and he did a handshake. That was around $75,000, and he made that and then shipped it here in pieces and then put it up. And there's an image of that unveiling in your book as well, and that's a really pretty impressive story. Now, the other miraculous thing about it all is that the day that John Paul was shot in the square, it was the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, Our Lady of Fatima. It was the 13th of May, and it was her feast day. And the bullet, when it went into his body, it actually turned and saved his life. And he felt it was the Blessed Mother turning the bullet to save his life. So he took that bullet after it was taken out of him, and he put it in the crown of Our Lady in Fatima. So on that statue, there's a crown, and her bullet, his bullet, is right in there. So that's a pretty powerful story, and that's why we have that there through the generosity of those good folks. Now, if you look up further, it's kind of hard to see from this angle, but there's a bell up there. That bell is from St. Leo's Church on the north side, and that bell was forged in 1907. So that's 100 years old when we dedicated the church in 2010. So it was already 100 years old when we dedicated the church. So we took it from them, and along with the statue of Teresa of Lisieux over there, that white marble statue, we got the bell and the statue from St. Leo's. Here you see on the top here, this round window, there are 3 coat of arms. Now when you build a new church, when it's dedicated, you're supposed to have the coat of arms of the Pope at the time and of the local bishop. So at the very top, you'll see that is the coat of arms. Does anybody have a guess what Pope's coat of arms that is? In 2010, who was Pope? Benedict, exactly. So that is Pope Benedict's. You see the little bear on the left-hand side. That has something to do with Bavaria. And it has the crossed keys. So, Peter was given the keys to the kingdom. So that's part of the papal flag. So if you see a shield and it has crossed keys behind it and the tiara on top, that hat, that pointed hat, then you know that that's a Pope's coat of arms, right? And that particular one is Benedict's. Now at the bottom of it, you see this little bib thing hanging down there. That is actually the yoke that archbishops wear. Is presented by the Pope to every archbishop. It's called the pallium. The pallium, it's made out of lamb's wool. And it's meant to say that there's a connection, there's a union between the Pope and the archbishop of every diocese. And it has the crosses on it. And so you'll notice if you see an archbishop celebrating Mass in his diocese, he'll be wearing that. And the Pope often wears it, where they have this union, and it's of the lamb's wool, so that they have this union between them. Now on the left-hand side is green. Now the green symbol, see the hat and the dolly things hanging down there? That is in green because that's the coat of arms of a bishop. So who was the bishop at the time the church was dedicated? Anybody know? Well, Wuerl approved the building, but then he went off to Washington, and then Zubik came to Pittsburgh, and that is Zubik's coat of arms. And if you look real close, these bishops' coat of arms and cardinals and that, they're divided shields. So on the one side is their personal thing. It pertains to them personally. And on the right-hand side is the diocese that they are wedded to. It's kind of like a marriage. Although they can get a divorce and get a new diocese somehow. Like we get different parishes as pastors. So on the right-hand side, that is the shield of the Diocese of Pittsburgh. It has a sword in the center, because who knows who the patron saint of Pittsburgh is? The clue is the cathedral church is always the patron, named after the patron saint of the diocese. So the Cathedral Church of Pittsburgh is what? What's it called? St. Paul's. So it's St. Paul. So the symbol of St. Paul, any image of St. Paul you'll find has a sword, because he persecuted the church in the early days. And so that sword sticking up in the center there is a symbol of St. Paul. Then those crosses, they're actually like checkerboards under the crosses. And if you've seen the city shield of Pittsburgh, it has a checkerboard on it. The city police, their cars, their shield of the city of Pittsburgh is a checkerboard. So that's why that is there. So that's the shield of the city of Pittsburgh, or the Diocese of Pittsburgh. On the left-hand side is the shield of Zubik himself. So he grew up in Ambridge, which is just south of here and is going to be part of this parish now in the grouping. So at the top there, it's supposed to be a bridge, that white thing. And then below it, on the right side, is the little green thing with a shaft of wheat, so his devotion to the Eucharist. And then on the other side, there's the yellow, and it has an M. And M's always mean Mary. Just like in the coat of arms of John Paul II, you see the M? That means Mary. So his devotion to the Blessed Mother. And then on the bottom, you can't see it very well, but there's a motto across there. And his motto is what? Anybody know? It was announced that he was going to be made a bishop for the first time as the auxiliary of Pittsburgh, and he had to choose a motto. And it was around the time of the year when we celebrate the Annunciation, when Mary was told by the angel Gabriel that she was chosen to be the mother of Christ. And Gabriel says to her, "Nothing is impossible with God." So he took that as his motto, the words of the angel Gabriel. And that's what it says, "Nothing is impossible with God." Then on the right-hand side, who knows what coat of arms that is? Who that might be? Well, it's red. Yeah, you guys know. It's red, and red is always the color for the cardinals. Now the cardinal is just a bishop who has been chosen by the Pope to be his special counsel. And what's really special about being a cardinal is that when the Pope dies, you get to go into what's called the conclave and elect the next Pope. So that's like the biggest thrill that a cardinal could have. So when they're made a cardinal, they pray the Pope dies so they can elect the next one. But they wear red. They wear red because they're supposed to be willing more than anybody else to shed their blood for the faith. So they wear red as a reminder that they're to shed their blood for the faith. And this happens to be the coat of arms of the first pastor here His name was Dan DiNardo, and he started the parish in that office building over to the white office building on the left-hand side, again, just down from the fire hall. That's where the parish began, in the basement of that office building. And he started celebrating Mass there, and then built the first church, which was a temporary building meant to become the social hall, but was used as the first church building, and he lived in the basement for about 2 years, a little less. Actually, he was pastor for about 2 years, and he lived in that for about 6 months. And then he was made bishop in Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa. And shortly after being there, maybe 5 years or so, he was named to Houston, Texas, as a coadjutor archbishop. Well, coadjutor means when the archbishop who was running the diocese retires or dies, he takes over. So after he became the Archbishop of Houston, Pope Benedict decided to name him a cardinal. So he's the first cardinal of Texas. Yeah. And there you are. So on the right-hand side, that's part of his shield. That is the Diocese of Houston, Galveston, Texas. That's their shield. So you see the star, the Texas star in the middle, and I don't know what the rest of it means. And then on the left-hand side is the green. And look, he has a checkerboard there to say, I'm from Pittsburgh. So no matter where he ends up, he still says, I'm from Pittsburgh. And then he has this vessel of oil, because he has this devotion to the women who brought the oil to anoint the body of Jesus. And the stories that Jesus told of the virgins with their torches burning ready, and they had to have the oil. And he has this whole thing about the sacredness of the oil that we were baptized with and confirmed with, and it's a life-giving ointment. And so he does this whole thing, and it's all part of his spirituality. And at the bottom, he has a coat of arms there, something about the holiness of the cross. And it's in Latin, and I can't remember what it is. So that's here, and this window is on the outside of the building, but the light is from the inside, so you can see it. So over the porch is all open there. Now we have these 3 clear glass so that you can see the window on the inside. That is Jesus welcoming the children. And there are 3 steps and 3 arches, and there's a lot of 3s if you pay attention in this building. And 3s always relate to the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it's intentional. Okay, any questions about this as you approach the church? The architect originally wanted to blow away this hill and have it all even with the other building. And I didn't want that to be the case, because this is one of the highest points in Allegheny County. And if you get on top of you up to the bell tower, you're looking down on all these other buildings around us. And I wanted it to be a beacon on a hill. And this idea of coming to the place where Jesus went up on the mountain to pray, that you're closer to the Lord, at least in a physical way. You just keep coming up. So that's why we did this. Plus, it was easier to build, because if we build into the side of the hill, you immediately have a basement. And originally they just wanted to do a slab on grade, which would be a lot cheaper, but then we don't have as much space. And I knew we would be growing, and we needed space for offices and such. So if we would have just built this on this level, we wouldn't have anything below it. And now we'd be scrambling to build a crazy another building. So it's easy and cheaper to build up than it is to build out. So that's why we also put the balcony in. So anything I'm forgetting, folks? No? Questions? Thoughts? Well, the Lord held off the rain for us. Let's go in. Thank you.